Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Sit Downs with Charlie Brown. I'm your host, DJ Charlie Brown, or whatever you prefer to call me. Joining me also is my brother Joe.
Hi.
And we have a very, very special guest here today on the episode. So, born and raised here right in Columbus, Ohio, alumni of Bishop Watterson High School, worked walk-on at the University of Michigan State, or Michigan State University, the one and only Mr. Patrick Rhomberg.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we were able to get the time to do this. I appreciate you coming on, Patrick.
Yeah, no problem. It's exciting. It's football season. It's we're coming down to the very end of the college regular season and the high school. It sounds like we have a couple high schools in the late season playoffs here, so this is an exciting time.
Yeah, so I think the first question I have for you is, how did you really get started into football?
So as a kindergartner, I played up on my brother's team, a couple years older, and my dad was the coach. And so he was a football player in his day in high school and was our coach in football, basketball, baseball, formally, and we play a little golf and a few other things. But so it just happened that I think as a young kid was fast enough to do pretty well, and but there was a time, to answer your question a little more specifically, when I was 8th grade to freshman year, and I started to be impressed by some of the older players, and they had big muscles, and you're like, wow, those, I want to be like that guy. So my dad tells a story that there was a day I came home and I said, Dad, I'm going to change my body and become a football player. And so from there, I think it just took a lot of time in the weight room and practicing, and
Yeah, so may I ask, who was your kind of guy growing up? Who was your favorite player that you sort of really liked watching? Like every Sunday or Saturday you sat down and was just like, man, you had to watch this player.
Yeah, so I played quarterback growing up. So I was a big fan of Peyton, but I grew up a Packers fan. I'm sorry.
Nah, you're fine. Yeah, I respect the Packers and their history. It's just the fans that I don't have a lot of respect for,
But speaking of Vikings, though, as you guys know, I have a little friendship with Kirk Cousins, and we're very sad for Kirk this year. It's a tough one. It's contract year, too.
Yeah.
So, but to answer your question, my favorite player growing up was Brett Favre, and then my favorite player, non-quarterback, was LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah,
and I loved him. Then you see all these fun quarterbacks now that can run and do different things, but when I was growing up, the quarterback was very statuesque. It was the Tom Brady and the Drew Bledsoe and the Peyton and Eli and those guys that were Phillip Rivers. And so for me, when I got to play quarterback, a little bit of the reality was I'm not 6'5" with a cannon for an arm, so you got to do a little more running. So in high school, we joked that I was a running back playing quarterback at 215 pounds. So
because part of your story is you play at Bishop Watterson, you win the D3 championship. One of the big things that I noticed with your profile is you went from playing quarterback to defensive back. I kind of want to know what essentially was the transition. Was it more easier or is it more difficult? Switching from offense to defense.
So I think it would be more difficult to transition from linebacker to quarterback, but it was a very tough transition. And the reality is that when I got to Michigan State, I was lucky to be there and have the opportunity, and they saw me as a guy who could be a value-added player, but not at quarterback. There's only one quarterback on the field, and if you go play linebacker or defensive back, then you can play on special teams and do a few different things that can be value-added. So when I got there, I wasn't sure if I was going to play safety or linebacker, and then very quickly they realized that I was not going to get skinny and fast like the DBs, but rather bulk up a little bit and be able to play linebacker. So to answer your question about the transitioning part, the physicality was a huge transition. So in high school, the players are strong, but as a linebacker, you don't have to deal with nearly the amount of good linemen trying to block you. So trying to learn to deal with linemen and also tackle better players. Like in practice, I'm trying to tackle Le'Veon Bell, and he jukes me out of my shoes. So finally you beat the lineman and you're right in position to tackle him, and then gives you a shimmy shake and he's gone. And so I thought it was a very hard transition, but I don't know of many linebackers that could transition and play quarterback. That would be tough. So I also had, I was very fortunate to have good coaches in college. Pat Narduzzi, who's the Pitt coach, was our D coordinator. And then Mike Tressel, and you guys remember Jim Tressel. Mike Tressel is currently the defensive coordinator for Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. And so they did a great job. But then some of the older players too, when I first got there, were like, there's one guy, Max Bulla, and he and I kind of look a lot alike. He's had short blonde hair and just from behind. He wore 40, I wore 48, so I think we looked a lot alike. So, but I tried to model my game after him, and he was the middle linebacker, captain of the team, and so one, you had good leadership and good coaching, and then just keep working hard. And
because I remember when I was doing research for this, I was looking at it. I completely forgot about this Michigan State team back in the early 2011, 2012 range, because that was that had a lot of talent. You had Cousins, a lot of the guys you mentioned, Bell, Jack Conklin, Will Golston. What was that like? Essentially that was probably one of the most, at least in recent memory, one of the most prosperous times for Michigan State.
So probably that years of 2010 to 2015 are the best years in school history. Really, I mean, in 1966 and 67, I believe, they won 2 national championships, but football was different back then, right? You're not playing for bowl games and playoffs, but 2011, when I got there, was Kirk Cousins' final year, and if you guys remember, that was the first year that the Big Ten, they added Nebraska, so they went from 11 teams to 12, and now you could have a conference championship. And you remember Legends and Leaders conferences, not East-West. So that, at that time, Sparty was stacked. So if we go down the roster between receivers, you had B.J. Cunningham, he's a Columbus guy, and then Keyshawn Martin and Keith Nickel, all were Big Ten team players. All 3 of them made first, second, or third team that year. And then you had Le'Veon, you had Edwin Baker, and then Larry Caper. Those 3 guys were all also at different times in their careers all Big Ten players at running back. And then you have Kirk, who has far surpassed, I think, my expectation that his talent level, that he's a definition of work hard, do the right thing, stay healthy, and obviously you got hurt this year, but in a kind of a weird thing. But funny you mentioned Will Golston. I was watching the Bucs the start of that game, and he was in on a sack early on, and he's a guy that was a very different story than me. He was a freak. He's 6'8". He's roughly 300 pounds and can run as fast as I can. And whereas when he decided to work really hard, he went from really good to great and is able to stay in the league for 10 years. And so I think that that time, and then you go from that team where we had the Hail Mary victory over Wisconsin that year. Then we played them in the Big Ten Championship, and that team had J.J. Watt and Russell Wilson on it. And we lose by, I think it was 2 or 1, but the final play, our punt returner takes it back to the 2-yard line, and they get a roughing the kicker, and so otherwise we're on the 2-yard line with a minute to go, probably going to win the game, and instead it goes all the way back. I think they get the first down, and we end up losing the game that way. So then we go to a bowl game my freshman year. We play Georgia, and it's a triple overtime game. And it's epic, and it's amazing, and we win that game, and so the next year, my expectation quickly, you quickly go from we're gonna win every game, and the next year we had kind of a rough year. You probably don't remember the name Andrew Maxwell, but he was our quarterback between Connor Cook and Kirk Cousins.
that does sound familiar. So.
And Le'Veon was really our main offensive weapon that year, and we went 7-6, played TCU in a bowl game. So we were 6-6, played TCU in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. Now I'll give you a little fun story about the B-Dubs Bowl. There's a wing eating contest.
Oh yeah.
That I thought it was going to be TCU's on one side of the table and we're on the other side of the table and you're eating until you can't. But it ended up being we go to B-Dubs and you just eat as many wings as you possibly can as a team, and then they count them all up, which is kind of nasty. You think about all these eating chicken wings that someone has to sit and count.
Yeah. No, like I've been to Buffalo Wild Wings too many times. Like I don't do like the super hot ones. I just do like the basic ones.
I'm a barbecue.
Yeah,
guy.
no, classic
Simple.
barbecue. Yeah. It's just like that's
ranch and celery, and I could eat. So anyway, one of our teammates ate 90 wings. 90. He was 350.
Yeah,
pounds.
I imagine it, like you saying that it was probably like an offensive lineman or something.
It was.
So
yeah, his name was Sean King.
Yeah.
And but so then after that, that's 2013. Now we're in 2013. Connor Cook's our quarterback. We have a lot of weapons again on offense, and we win the Big Ten championship over Ohio State, and then win the Rose Bowl. And I wanted, in addition to the winner's menu I mentioned, I was going to bring over my bowl rings and let you guys have a chance to see those.
Because that's the thing, like what I kind of wanted to ask about the Rose Bowl, because like especially like in the Big Ten, like obviously the Big Ten championship and the national playoffs now, those are like the top two goals. But especially for Big Ten teams, Pasadena and the Rose Bowl, that's always what people would want to go. Because I remember one of my friends would always say, if we can't go to the national title game, I want to go to Pasadena.
No doubt.
So, yeah.
So traditionally, up until the playoffs started, we think of the Rose Bowl as, if you're not in the national championship, that's the second biggest game out there. Now that there's the playoff format, the Rose Bowl being a part of that, it almost feels less. It's like less important, because it used to be the Big Ten championship winner would go play the Pac-12 championship winner in the Rose Bowl unless they were playing for the BCS national title. Yeah. So our year that we won the Rose Bowl was the last year that it was the normal, what we're talking about, like the old school style. Because then the playoffs started in 2014 and Ohio State wins the national championship. But it's at Michigan State we had so many close games. Like 2012, every game we lost was by 3 points or less. Yeah. And then in 2013, all those are reversed. Now we're winning every close game, and the only game we lost that year was to Notre Dame at home. We kind of got Notre Dame homered, if I'm being honest. There was 11 pass interference calls that game, which is crazy. But then even in the Rose Bowl, like it came down to the final drive where Stanford was going for it on fourth down and short, and potentially going to be able to score if they get that first down, and we stuff them and we win by 4 points. And so, the Rose Bowl was special, and there was a lot of moments while we were out there when you're spending some time with family and your buddies that you remember just as much as you remember the game. But the game itself, I remember running into the stadium and just being in awe, because that's the stadium that you idolize for your whole life, and I had never been there.
It's a venue that is unlike anything in college football, just because it's down in Florida, super nice weather, and it's just the historical precedent of it. You look back at like all the history of the Big Ten teams, like all the greats have gotten their name there.
Right, and you and those are the images on the highlights that we remember, right? The Rose Bowl, they do a pan around the stadium, and then they show like, Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio State winning those over the years. And I grew up here a Buckeye fan, so the Rose Bowl was important to me. And the year before I went to Michigan State and was still rooting for the Buckeyes at that time, that was when Terrell Pryor and the Buckeyes won the Rose Bowl. And then unfortunately Jim Tressel got in trouble for that whole thing, and so it's the Rose Bowl is a special deal, and I'm very thankful about it all.
One thing that I did want to ask is, What was the craziest story either during a game or practice that you ever experienced during your time at Michigan State?
Okay, well, here's a funny one. So in practice, there'd be a lot of fist fights.
Okay, yeah.
And so guys would get all pissed off, especially early on in training camp.
Yeah.
More so than during the season, because in training camp, it's full go, meaning like during the season, you're not going to tackle Le'Veon Bell as hard as you can because you don't want to hurt him.
Yeah.
And you're not going to hit the quarterback. But in training camp, it's like you got to hit these guys and you got to try really hard. And so then that leads to, since you're doing it once in the morning and once in the afternoon for 2 days, and then that's 2 weeks long, there's just a lot of fights.
Yeah.
So about 2 years in, Coach D started a new rule that if you fought, you had to go hold that guy's hand under the scoreboard while the team ran sprints as punishment. I never had to do that, but the one time there was a big team fight, and we had to run for the whole rest of practice with our pads on. Everybody's throwing up. And these two guys are sitting over there who started the fight, just having to hold hands. And think about it, you just fought this guy, now you have to hold his hand.
Yeah, it's like, and you watch your teammates suffer. It's like just the awkward feeling of like, oh God, I'm going to pay for this later.
So now, here's another one. So first game at Michigan State. We're playing Boise State.
Yeah.
And it's a Friday night game. My parents are there. And as halftime clicks to 0, I am literally already running to the tunnel. My mom is laughing because I have to shit my pants. And I'm like, I'm in white pants. I'm a freshman walk-on.
Yeah.
You can't do this, but I had to go so bad. So I'm running into the tunnel before everybody else. And normally I'm in the back, right? And so she still laughs. She's like, she sees me like waddling to the tunnel. But those are the funny things that you remember. But, then in practice, the times that I would make plays and, be a part of it as a player was special. And then as I got older there, I realized that my skill wasn't as good as other players, and I wasn't going to get as much playing time. So I kind of started being a player coach. And then there's some fun moments where you get to teach a guy something that he can do better than you, and then you watch him execute it, and you can kind of be a part of it as a coach. And there's a big part of me that wishes I would coach football. Now, I coached 1 year at my high school when Matthew was there, and that was a ton of fun, but it's just too big of a time commitment to have another job and all that. But I mentioned Pat Narduzzi. I went and interviewed with him at Pitt after he took that job, and I didn't get the job. We talked about it afterward, and he goes, I knew that you weren't quite ready to commit to moving away from your girlfriend and all that stuff. So it's everything happens for a reason, and I'll be coaching football forever. But it's a lot of memories.
Yeah, I definitely can see it. And, you definitely just talking with you thus far, you just seem like I was really nervous coming into this because it's like, oh man, I've only interviewed like one other player in like my lifetime on this, and it's like doing this with you, I was really nervous, just had jitterbugs, but you just seem like a really average guy. You came in, you gave me a hug. It just seems like it's been really special talking with you thus far, man. So.
Yeah, this is fun for me too. I don't get to reminisce all the time about my years, and also think about this is my first podcast actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is fun for me. But there's still a few buddies I remain close with. One of my roommates at Michigan State is the head coach at a successful high school here in Ohio called Ironton. It's in Southern Ohio. Now, they were a long-time Southern Ohio powerhouse school. They're smaller schools. We were talking about divisions earlier. They'd be D5 here. And so, obviously, the competition as they get towards the state championship is not as good as the higher levels. But they have a kid who just went to Ohio State, and another guy. So, I go down to some of his games. They just lost last week. But, yeah, it's interesting how quickly life happens, and then you don't get to see these people who are really important to you for a long time. And it was very special just week 4 when Michigan State played Washington this year. We had a team reunion for the Rose Bowl, so the 10-year reunion. So I got to take my wife up for the first time. She had never been. My whole family joined, and it was great to have everybody back there and see campus again, and then see all the faces. And there was just every single person that you saw. It was like, oh, dude, this feels so good to see you. And so there's a lot of memories, and the Rose Bowl year was really special. And growing up a Buckeye fan, I get to tell fans around here that Michigan State won 3 out of 5 during my 5 years. They beat us in 2012 and 2014, and they only beat us in 2012 because they didn't make the right call on the sideline. They fumbled the ball. Braxton Miller.
Oh right, I remember this.
And Sparty, our guy Curtis Drummond, picks it up, and he kind of crosses over, so his both feet are right on the edge line. They call him out, but he took it back to the house for a touchdown, and we would have won that game. But
one thing I did want to ask you, because obviously you being an alum of Michigan State, I did want to ask you just kind of like a lot about the Big Ten. So obviously, I'm not going to get too much into what's been going on at Michigan State right now, just because I do, just for your sanity, because it's
just such a bummer what's going on there, because it's some bad decisions being made by a few people that really bring the whole thing down, and you see that all the time in these scandals. What I think the problem is, it just leads to bad culture, right? So then people want to transfer. Guys don't believe in the program as much when you're like, well, our coach is doing weird stuff and he just got fired, and now we're not winning games, and so this year's been tough. But so as the Big Ten's changing a lot. USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon are coming over. For me personally, I just don't know how to really feel about it, because it does feel like it just feels like it is about money, which is unfortunate. It is.
Fortunate. And, I don't think realistically they kind of fit what the Big Ten was supposed to be about. You had Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Iowa. It just doesn't seem like bringing in guys from the West Coast fits what it is.
Yeah, it feels like Big Ten football is smash mouth.
Cold
weather football.
People say it all the time. You want a good running back? Look to the Big Ten.
Right.
Because you have guys like Jonathan Taylor right now. Travion Henderson. J.K. Dobbins. All of them seem to really come from Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State. Barkley. Yeah, that's another Big Ten guy. So that's just sort of my thing with it. I will say this though: the way they can try and make up to it. And, this is just off topic from football. I would really like to see them get hockey programs here. Because, with hockey, college hockey, it's not been, me and Joe have talked about it a lot. It's not been like the sport it used to be. Every year it seems like a Minnesota team's competing for it. It's not that it's not competitive. It's that that's the issue. It's no one's really putting in the effort. Because I guarantee you, I know Washington's actually considered it. Because I feel like they... obviously them being in the state of Washington, they're looking to grow the sport, especially with the Kraken's success right now in the NHL. So I think, at least consider it, because that's just my thing.
Well, I think the concern for me when you add in those teams from the West Coast, and just recently they added in Maryland and Rutgers all the way on the East Coast, and it's sports like hockey, it's girls volleyball, it's softball, and all the ancillary sports that those kids have to put in the same amount of time as the football team does, but they don't get to always fly to games, and and then they might play their games on Tuesday night, and so I think the travel and all that for every other sport's going to be a nightmare. For football and men's basketball, it'll be super easy.
USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, they all have the means of taking the time of traveling the time zones, but it's going to be logistically a nightmare, because like I remember talking with a lot of people. I knew a lot of people who did athletics, like, when I went to Mankato and Minnesota, and, people who went to Minnesota. It was just hard because, sometimes it's like you're on the bus for like hours on end, and then you're crashing in a hotel room away from your bed.
Well, I was just talking to my buddies who played at Ashland, a D2 school here in Ohio, a little bit north of here, and they played in the GLIAC, which would be, Grand Valley State, Wright State, up in Michigan. There's some teams, it's like the Great Lakes Conference is what it was. But they had to go all the way up to northern Michigan, which is across that peninsula into the upper Michigan peninsula, and that's an 11-hour bus ride. And I think for them, they got to fly a few times in college, but they didn't have the budget. And what's the budget at for, like, let's just say at Indiana for volleyball travel? Like, it just can't be very much. So it just means that potentially those sports have to alter like everything they do just to survive. When the whole thing about adding these teams in is thinking, how can we make more money from football?
Because that's the thing. Like, they're talking about like where I'm drawing a line on one big thing here is I remember, I'm not sure if this is confirmed or not, they want to move the Big Ten championship to Vegas instead of Indy. I'm like, no, what are you talking?
Oh, that would be a bummer.
Because like I've always remembered it being in Indianapolis for the longest time. It's always like the road to Indianapolis.
And
Lucas Oil.
From here, it's only really 2 maybe 3 hours to get to the stadium from here. So
the only people who'd benefit from that is like USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington.
Catering to all of them.
Yeah, when you're not even catering to the Big Ten, and you're just going to have another situation of they're going to move out and just go somewhere more convenient.
Well, you look at what's happening. So those 4 teams are coming to the Big Ten. Some teams from the Pac-12 are going to the Big 12, and then some teams are going to the SEC. The SEC will be 16 teams. The Big Ten will be 18. The Big 12, maybe they'll have 14.
Yeah, I think it's
14 or 16. So what happens next? I mean, like, so then you're only going to have maybe 3 major conferences. Well, then you have the ACC.
Yeah.
So 4 major conferences. I think that, to me, it's going to become...
it's just a logistical nightmare.
Well, to your point about tradition and rivalry and what makes your... when you see the old clips, it brings you back to, like, this is what I view football as. A lot of that's going to go away, and it's unfortunate because, like, think about next year for the Big Ten, they're no longer going to have East-West divisions.
Yeah.
It's just going to be the 18 teams, and the top 2 teams are going to go play in the Big Ten Championship.
Yeah.
So imagine that there's only one undefeated team, and it's the winner of Michigan, Ohio State, like this year.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So then they have to take that game and probably put it in like week 8.
Yeah.
Because you don't want those teams playing week 12 and then in the Big Ten Championship the next week. So to your point, though, it is a bummer. Like, I want my Big Ten teams to play in the cold, in the snow, and I don't want USC to be hosting late November games. When it's warm.
And that's another thing. Like, you really think a bunch of Cali kids are gonna buck out like Minnesota and like
or Rutgers
people realize like Minnesota, it gets like mid-November, you're getting to like 20 degrees minimum.
So when the coldest game we ever played was at Minnesota, it's minus 17.
That's not surprising,
minus 17, and so that year. Minnesota had just changed from Under Armour to Nike. Yeah. And we were a Nike school. And so you couldn't wear, Under Armour cleats or gloves or anything. Now, with NIL, you could probably wear jewelry like you see the guys wearing, sponsored and all this stuff. But at the time, you'd wear Nike. So we didn't have enough gear for all of us, how cold it was. So Minnesota had all this leftover Under Armour stuff, so they gave all of everyone on our team leggings and like thermal thick, tight gear to wear, which was awesome. But man, was that cold!
That's it. It gets super cold there in particular, especially.
Do you guys wish that the Vikings played outside?
at times, yes, I do. Just because that was how they were back in before the Metrodome days. Right. That's what got Bud Grant. His title of being one of the baddest men in Minnesota, just because he was out.
It'd be quite a home field advantage.
Yeah. Playing out in the cold and snow.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but that's what makes Big Ten football feel like Big Ten football. Nebraska's cold, Iowa's cold, Minnesota's cold, Wisconsin's cold, Ohio's cold, Michigan's cold, New Jersey's cold in the winter.
Yeah.
And then you got UCLA, which is in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing here? Come on, guys. Here's the thing. Washington, I know, no, it does get cold there on some.
And so does Oregon.
Yeah, but it's California, West Coast. It's no.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's, what I think will be interesting, though, is can teams like Ohio State and Michigan go now out to those places and win some games and then steal some recruits?
Yeah.
Can Minnesota go beat UCLA and, steal LA's best running back or something like that?
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel in terms of competition level, for the bigger teams, Ohio State, Michigan, maybe even Penn State, I feel they're not going to have trouble, because what I noticed is UCLA in years is they're sort of they're not an elite school, but I'd say they're a consistent bowl team, one that'll appear up here. Yeah. Oregon, little tough. Oregon and Washington, those two are a little tougher because especially now, they're really good programs. USC, I'm skeptical of, just because here's the thing. Lincoln Riley I have nothing against the dude. I don't know him personally. He cannot, for the life of him, recruit for defense worth anything.
Worth a shit. Yeah.
You had probably, here's the thing. Caleb Williams, I'll admit he has talented. Not sold on him on the personality or mentality. But here's the thing.
I wish he wouldn't paint his nails and be so weird.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's not his fault that he's doing everything to put up 42 points and the defense lets up 52. That's my thing with him.
Yeah, we've seen, teams like that. You remember Texas Tech?
Yeah,
when they had Michael Crabtree and they had no defense, but they were scoring 60 points a game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's again, here's the thing. Even though that's sort of the philosophy of a lot of these Big Ten teams. Run the ball smash mouth style, heavy on defense.
Yeah.
So,
let's keep the score under 30. And,
I
in some ways it's exciting, but it's not what I want. It's not. I would prefer if it were the original. I like when Nebraska was in, and then when they added Maryland and Rutgers, I kind of said the same thing. What are we doing?
Here's the thing. If they came to us and said we want to add Iowa State, I would actually be okay with that, because Iowa State, that's a bit of a rivalry, and I feel they'd fit in here.
I agree with that.
I feel bringing in these guys, it's no, it's what are we doing?
I totally agree, and Iowa State would be a perfect one. West Virginia wouldn't have been bad if they.
Yeah, West Virginia would need some time, but I feel they could definitely.
But they feel they're West Virginia being close to Pittsburgh. It just kind of feels like they're in that gritty football type of atmosphere. I want to have it back, football back 20 years ago, when it was you can hit anybody the way you want, and you can, the defense still dominated, and running game mattered. Now you look at football and it's so weird. If you hit a guy too hard, even if it's a legal hit, they're going to call you for unnecessary roughness. Or if the quarterbacks, they're all doing these off schedule throws where they're running out of the pocket and flicking it sidearm.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The guys are great, but you kind of see the same thing in basketball, where the way I grew up learning basketball was much more traditional style, with set shots, and now it's all this isolation play and one-on-one, and I kind of feel like football's trending that same way.
It is definitely.
It's a little more street ball version, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now I apologize for this in advance. I know your hatred of Big Blue already runs deep, being someone from Ohio and going to Michigan State, but I feel like it's worth talking about Mr. Khaki Pants Harbaugh, as I'm calling him for his latest dilemma that he's being caught up in. And because I'm like, dude,
at first I didn't really know what to believe of it. Like, the story is so ridiculous. Like, they have this guy who's supposedly a rogue actor going to other teams' games and getting on the sideline, not even being in the stands, but he's he's doing spy stuff. He's he's putting espionage into sports, and that's and then what I don't like is how Michigan's handled it. They turned around and were like, well, look, everybody's kind of doing this, and it's no big deal. And I think it is a very big deal, and I think that, unlike other times when schools get punished for cheating, as in recruiting violations and paying a player and stuff, they don't have in-game info to cheat.
Yeah.
And so it really bothers me because, it's like the whole idea of, the Astros a few years ago.
Yeah.
When they had the sign stealing for baseball. And they only really got a slap on the wrist too. Yeah. I felt like their punishment should have been more because you guys are actively cheating. So it's a bummer to me that Michigan gets to continue to play, and Harbaugh really just kind of has to sit out during games, and he can still coach during the week. And I don't feel like the punishment fits the crime.
Yeah, I don't either, because like here's the thing, the fact is, it's still, especially now with the newer information, I'm not sure if you heard, but apparently coaches were telling Joe, you mentioned this said this once this weekend, coaches were telling players, say this to if they were interviewed or asked about it, and it's what kind of culture you running here, man? It's you were supposed to be the one to bring Michigan to a national title, not be literally the biggest scandal in all of major sports,
Well, and one thing I think that Michigan State culture of the team, Coach D'Antonio, he took it upon himself to be a molder of young men and try to help boys become men. You show up at 18, you leave at 22 or 23, and you have a work ethic and you understand, the value of that. What it feels like to me is that Michigan is so desperate to try to win that they've forgotten that there's, ethics to everything. And to your point, what are you teaching these young guys if you're telling them to lie about the cheating that you're doing? It doesn't make me feel good. I wish, sports are supposed to be an even playing field. It is truly reality TV because you don't know what's going to happen. It's not this fake, weird, housewives reality TV show that isn't real. But sports is real. You're watching it live, and you're seeing guys get hurt, and you're seeing guys cry because they lay everything out there on the line, and that's just not what sports is to me. You should not cheat your way to victory, and you see other guys, for instance, like Lance Armstrong, when he got in trouble for cheating, he got very punished. Michigan's cheating, not really getting punished. They can still go win a national championship this year, and that bothers me.
Yeah, Jason Giambi, another example. He got busted for steroids during the infamous '98 home run race, and he, even though it cost him the Hall of Fame, he just said, "Yeah, I cheated and took steroids." So yeah, but I feel like you definitely have a point. What Michigan's doing right now, it just feels like they should have. They need to read the room because, you look at, even Minnesota, for example, PJ Fleck. People have criticized him because, they don't always win all the time, which is fair, but you got to understand this. Gophers have had one of the highest GPAs among their student athletes, particularly the football program. He's educated guys you're either going to do two things. You're either going to be go at pro if you can, or you're going to be a better person or be be a positive influence.
Right. You put value, like what you're talking about is kind of what I was saying, is you put value on taking this young man and growing him into a grown man through football and through the life lessons you can teach that way. It doesn't feel like what Michigan's doing is sending kids in the right direction. It feels like you're teaching kids that there's a easier way than hard work, and I think we're all saying that's total bullshit.
Yeah. So, final thing I kind of want your thoughts on. So, obviously, for the life of me, Iowa is already punched their ticket to the Big Ten game, which I'm just like, oh God. Like, here's the thing: Minnesota probably didn't belong there either, but it's like
they were
Iowa
close.
was so bad this year. They were so bad.
It's a historically weird season where a team's going to go and to play for a championship when their offense, I don't think, has scored 20 points all year.
No, here's the thing. Like, I remember looking at it like some of their games. It was like me, because one of my friends, Cam, he's from Iowa and he's a big Hawkeye guy. It's like
my dad's a Hawkeye.
Yeah, it's like they've scored. It's like they're going into halftime with a total of like 3 or 6. It's like that's alarming.
And if they scored a touchdown, the defense probably did it.
Yeah, it was either a field goal, and if they scored a touchdown, it was a defensive one. But that's the thing. Like, Iowa's obviously going to be there. For me, between Michigan and Ohio State, like, I think realistically, my heart, like, my mind can't really make it up, but I think realistically, I want Ohio State. Because, like, here's the thing. Like, I get Michigan's talented. They need a punch in the teeth, especially with what's been happening. They've been getting arrogant. They've been getting cocky.
It would be nice if Michigan got punched in the mouth and didn't make the playoff.
Yeah.
Because if they had the season that they're having without cheating, then I'd say, good for you.
You earned the right.
Do your best. What it feels like now is that they should not be allowed to play. So I'm rooting for them to go down because I don't want to see them.
Yeah, it's the first time you got to root for someone to go down. And plus, I think realistically, the fact is, even though Harbaugh's not going to be there, Ohio State's going to be even more motivated now, just because like they want this more than anything. Because
Ohio State has not had the reality check that they've been given the last 2 years for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
They were just able to kind of coast to the postseason. They get to play. They play a Michigan team that's good, but they're still winning all those games. And then whoever they're playing coming from the Big Ten West was usually kind of an easier game for them. And then now they're playing for either the Rose Bowl or the playoffs or whatever. And it's in some ways it's nice to see the conference have multiple premier teams. Yeah. But what I don't want to see is the conference have teams at the top that are fucking cheating.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, I think realistically, like I want to see Ohio State, Iowa, like, because here's the thing with Ohio State, like, I'll admit, Kyle McCord, not exactly my first option for being a quarterback, especially after a lot of their previous guys, but he's solid enough to where I think he's got enough to really to win big games. And plus, here's my thing, is like, I feel like, I truly believe they make that kick against Georgia that went super far, they probably are the national champions last year.
I agree. I think they beat TCU and are national champions. And I have to say, CJ Stroud has totally impressed me.
Yeah, no, he's probably the first QB out of Ohio State that might actually be the one.
Yeah, and you would have thought that it was going to be
Fields or
Dwayne Haskins or somebody.
Yeah, it's just like he's realistically, he's in his first year, and he's not only up for Rookie of the Year, he's being in talks of MVP. That's insane for a kid, for a rookie.
Insane. Yeah, he's been really impressive. So what's your prediction for next week? Michigan or Ohio State?
I think Ohio State. I think Ohio State gets it.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks too.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna go into Michigan.
Yeah.
And be pissed off, and
even if it's probably one of the more hostile environments in the Big Ten, especially now, they still are going to have them. They have a lot of bulletin board material to work with, and it's going to give them the edge. So,
I think it's going to be. You know what? I'm just excited that there's going to be a great game on next week, and whatever happens. But I'm hoping for a Buckeye victory, which is hard for me to say. Yeah. I don't normally say that.
No, here's the thing. I went to Mankato State. I do like the Gophers, because my mom went there. A lot of my family went there, and I just, even though they struggled, I gotta have respect, especially for Ohio State. They're one of the best, and they've proved it again and again.
They sure have. So.
Yeah. Well, man, I thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you guys all.
Thanks for including me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Next time you guys are in town, let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. We will. So that is it for today, guys. See you guys next time. Peace.